Hi, and welcome back to the Holding Space podcast. And today we are holding space for motherless daughters, and it's complicated. So today I have with me Dion. Hi, Dion.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. We're just going to start with just briefly how or what your relationship was, or how your relationship went with your mom as you were growing up.
I think the way I describe my mother is as a um, provider. She was not a nurturer in any regard. And from my memory that I have of her, I think but she provided. She taught us a lot. I think when my siblings and I left home, we were all prepared to run a household, keep it clean, grocery shop. I mean, she taught us the necessary life skills. The flip side to that coin is, again, she was not a nurturer. It was more like being in the military, if I had to liken it to something,
Mhm.
to a point where when I did go in the military, it was no comparison to home. Like I found the military easier than growing up. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So that, in a sense, if you're saying that the military was easier, then I can imagine that that was that was not a easy upbringing.
No, 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 it was not easy. I think that when I reflect on it, when I sit with some of the memories I have, it's very disheartening and heartbreaking. I think that what I've been working on with my therapist is reparenting myself in the way that I
Mm,
wish or I should have been parented. And I think that is just my truth. And not to say, I think, especially in the Black community, we don't talk about these things, and I wish we did more because it could help more people and letting them know that they're not alone. And I find it easier because my mom has transitioned. She's now in my ancestral group. So I hold her in very high regard, but it doesn't negate the harm that was done to me as a young person. So
mm.
little Dion, my inner child, is still healing from that trauma.
Absolutely, absolutely. Were you able to have a conversation or to address some of the things or all of the things that you wanted to address before she passed away?
Yes, she and I had a what I call a courageous conversation because normally when I would bring up, well, why do you talk to us this way, or why are you so mean to us? She would have an excuse like we were so bad, and we were not bad kids at all. Trust me. And but at the end of her life, she really relented and just said, I um was abusive and I was verbally abusive. And, I could tell that she had some regret. And of course, you don't want someone coming to the end of their life with regret, but I'm happy that we were able to delve into that conversation, something that I'd been wanting like all my life since I was old enough to recognize what was happening in my home compared to my friends or other kids my age. And even after I left home and the friends that I made in college and just through my developmental stages as a woman, no one, I've only met one other person whose mom was similar to my mom. And that's telling over 50 some years, or I guess I'll say after leaving home, what, 35 years now?
Mhm.
One other person, one.
Mm. Wow. So, with you being able to have that conversation with your mom and get to some sort of resolve, how did that make you feel, or how did that change the relationship?
Well, partly because I think it led to a level of forgiveness that I hadn't been able to um, reach. Over the years, I think there were times that I really hated my mom, and I knew that when I would try to look for a Mother's Day card, and I'm just like, I don't feel this way. This card is a
Yeah.
lie. And then, so I think it led me to a level of forgiveness to a point where I wanted to know her story. I wanted to
Mm.
know how she grew up and, through through all that I went through with her, I didn't have the language to
Mm.
talk to her about those things. And I think even if I did, if I brought it up, there would have been a level of defense or this barrier that I wouldn't have been able to break through just because of how she was raised. And
Mhm.
so now I feel I'm left with this void because she died shortly after that conversation. So it was the start of something that was left undone.
Mm.
So I'm glad that it led to a level of forgiveness, but I feel sad that we weren't able to continue the conversation
Right. Mm.
because I really don't feel like I know my mom. I knew of her when I see
Right.
pictures of her as a younger woman before she became my mom, or when she first became my mom. I never met that woman. From what I
Mm.
saw in the pictures, she seemed more happy and full of joy. And, this is not something that I recall. And I know that being a single mom myself, it had to be hard on her. So
Right.
I'm sure having 3 kids at a young age just took a toll on her. But yeah, I just wish I was able to talk to her more about that toll and, how it manifested itself and what could she have done differently, and just to let her know that she too could have released that shame or whatever she was carrying had she trusted us enough to talk with us once we were old enough to understand.
Right. Right.
She did mention feeling like, we're from a small town in Eastern North Carolina. And I think her feeling like she should have moved us to Raleigh or a more metropolitan
Mm.
area. But I think she felt beholden to her family. So she
Okay.
didn't. Or if she would have tried, that there would have been some opposition from her family. So that led me to believe that there was a stronghold there that I didn't, quite understand either. So
Mhm.
that's what I meant by, that the conversation was started by her
Okay.
admitting, that she was verbally abusive and she wished she had done things differently. And she named a couple of things. So just the acknowledgement and the naming, you
Okay.
know, put me on a trajectory to forgive.
Understood. Understood. Well, I'm glad you were able to get at least that from her. Now, as she was about to transition, were you her caregiver?
No, my sister was. It was kind of known that my sister was my mom's favorite kid. And I mean, that was known, plus I moved away. So I wasn't able to provide that service. But I did, I was aware my sister was very communicative. I just could not, move back and forth over the 10-hour trek. I was in Florida at the time. And I didn't even make it up to see her. I saw her probably 2 weeks before she passed away. Um, but other than that, I wasn't there for all the doctor's visits or the trips to the
Right.
emergency room and those types of things. My sister pretty much carried the brunt of that responsibility.
Do you carry anything behind that, or do you
No, I
have
don't.
anything?
No, I
Okay.
was just about to say, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I think that
Yeah.
I examined myself pretty deeply when my mom first happened and my sister, but that was their relationship. That wasn't our relationship. So the caregiver was the caregiver that had been the caregiver. Her and my sister were
Makes
very, very
sense.
close. So that was okay in my mind. That was the way it was supposed to be. And I wasn't gonna beat myself up and take ownership of that because it wasn't for me to take.
Right. I understand.
That
Now
was a
you
great
mentioned no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that was a great question because I'm sure I'm the oldest, so I'm sure people wonder about that, but no, I didn't feel any way or have any regret or anything of that nature.
Well, that's understandable if that's not your relationship even prior to,
Right.
illness or death happening. So that's very understandable.
Mhm.
Now you did mention your sister being it was known that she was a favorite child. Tell me more about that.
I think because of my mom's relationship with her father, I think there was a difference in the relationship with the fathers. We had different fathers, but I think that, as we grew up, my sister was the favored. She was favored.
Mhm.
And so, and she was light skinned, all that whole, what is it called, colorism within the family. So she was, she was favored, and that was known. Like it wasn't a secret,
Mhm.
And the beautiful thing about that is it did not taint how I felt about my sister. I think our
I love
relationship
that.
is more, it's more strained today, but growing up, like I have always adored my sister and treated her as such. So fortunately, I didn't let the actions of others, make me view her through a lens of envy or discord or anything like that.
Mhm. I love that. But did it make you feel a certain type of way towards your mom because of that?
Well, I think those feelings came later. I think that I resented the wedge that she seemed to um, place between my siblings and me. I think that the dynamic that we now have was created by my mom. And I'm going to say that and stand on it, because there was a difference in how we all were treated, with my sister being the favored one. And so
Mhm.
now we're all, estranged from one another. And, I don't think it could have turned out any differently. I wish it were different, but like, I've accepted that this is what it is. So I
Right.
think that resentment came later once I started going to therapy and once I started observing other families. And that's not to say I think all families have a level of dysfunction or a level of dissension or a level of, they don't get along
Absolutely.
all the time. Yeah, but to have uh, children that grew up in the same house who don't interface with one another is something that was deeply rooted a long time ago. I think those seeds were planted a long time ago.
Mhm. Have you guys, tried to reconcile since the passing of your mom, or that's not something that
I
you
mean,
got into?
here and
Okay.
there, I think there have been, attempts, but nothing sustainable. And that's again with me in some regard. I mean, it
Right.
hurts, especially around the holidays or like I'm in my home state now, and I haven't spoken with either of them, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth anymore. I think I'm just accepting. I'm in a phase of acceptance right now.
I understand.
Against my
So
will, but it has to be a self-selected acceptance because I can't keep extending an olive branch for it to be slapped to the ground and set on fire. It's like I'm not
right.
gonna keep doing it for myself.
It has to be a two-party participants,
Right,
willing participants. Yeah.
reciprocal, that
Mhm.
reciprocity, and I think as I grow and develop and bloom, reciprocity is a word that I like to keep in my emotional repertoire because that has to be a part of any relationship that I'm in, be it friend, family, or whomever. It has to be reciprocal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm the same way. I feel exactly the same way. You have mentioned a couple of times that you started going to therapy. In going to therapy, what is it that you have learned or about yourself through this process, or learned about maybe some tools or some things that you
Mhm.
uncovered that you weren't aware of, as it relates to the relationship with your mom
Yeah, I think
during
that
the process?
one of the things I say to people about therapy is it's the greatest gift that one can give themselves. And I'm also a very spiritual person, so I think therapy is an extension of my spirituality. And when I come to the end of myself, like the end of my tools or strategies that I've learned or procured or curated, cultivated, whatever you want to say over the years, when I those don't work for me, that's where therapy happens and it
Mhm,
works because again, like
mhm,
you just said, I get to learn new strategies. And I think that what I learned is that parents can be narcissists too. And
mhm,
that if you don't take time to sit and think about your younger self and the inner child, because we all have one, that you will continue to repeat that pattern. So, for example, the men that I've dated and some of my bosses have been narcissists because I hadn't yet realized that I seek that type of person still trying to, I guess, discover or find this love, but the behavior of that person is just abhorrible. So learning to recognize that and break it. And then I learned about my what is it called? What is it called? Your some kind of style. I can't find the word right now, but
Attachment style?
attachment style. Yes, I learned about my attachment style, and that's a derivative of how I was raised in a trauma laden environment. And
Mhm,
then that part of my perfectionism and my a lot of my behaviors being very goal oriented and black and white, and the parts of my personality are also manifestations of trauma. So I learned all of that. My therapist is absolutely amazing. And so we do EMDR, I think is what it's called. So it helps to redesign or create these new neural pathways so you stop repeating these behaviors. Um, so she really encourages me to go back to that time and think about it and how was I feeling and what do I see. And at first I was like, this is a crock of, you know what I mean? Like I did not ascribe to it. But then
mhm,
as I did it, I was like, oh my God, and how I felt afterwards and just the release of that situation. So she wrote down like all of these things that I said I wanted to um, talk about. And one of them would be like the betrayal that I felt for my siblings or one of my siblings. And then we haven't unpacked that. So
mhm,
that's like one of our targets in therapy. So, but in terms of my mom, she's really helped me see the love that was there, but also how the dysfunctionality still impacts me as a grown woman.
mhm,
And to just acknowledge that, to name it, and so I can continue on this trajectory towards healing. And I also learned that healing is not finite; it is ongoing. It's daily. Because when you
it is,
grow up
it
in a
is.
verbally abusive home, those words are like etched. They're indelible. They're etched in your brain. So to wake up every day and speak positively to myself and just and to little Dion and just affirm both
Mhm.
of us. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. One thing that that spoke to me or came up for me when you were speaking and telling your experience in therapy is how, the perfectionism, stemming from the trauma and certain other things. I have seen where some people, because it's something that you can control, those things that you control them, because that was something that you could not control growing up
Yes.
as a child. So I definitely am familiar with that, but I'm glad that you're able to work through that and get down, to the nitty gritty of where that came from.
Yeah, and
does
I
it
think
does it bother you? Is it something that you maybe overly obsessed about being
yeah,
perfectionist?
I think that it serves me well in some instances. I know other
Mhm,
people don't like it, but they like the outcome, you know.
mhm,
Um, they like the outcome. They like that, if I'm planning something, they know it's going to be top notch,
right.
but they don't like the incessant calls and the emails and the,
Mm,
text messages that say, this is the plan, because that's just a part of who I am. There's something that I'm working through. But it
mhm,
serves me well in in planning and structure, but where it's a hindrance is that I don't there are no gray areas in my life. Like I don't do well in areas where I'm out of control or I don't know what the plan is. Like I'm not a person that you could call me on a Tuesday night and say, girl, let's go skating. It would just give me anxiety. And I'm
mm,
like, absolutely not. I'm not going. Now we can go next Tuesday because I have a plan. And so I think just knowing that. And I remember when I was doing my doctorate, I held my proposal and would not send it because I was deathly afraid that it wasn't perfect. And I remember my friend, the one person whose mom is like my mom, said, if you don't send it, they can't give you the feedback you need. And so another saying that I've heard just recently from my dietitian is don't let perfection be the enemy of good. And that has resonated with me. And so now, because to me, perfectionism is tantamount to paralysis. So for me, if I know that the outcome is not going to be what I want, I won't even start. So just hearing that saying, and it's something her mom taught her, don't let perfectionism be the enemy of good, has led me to just start. I feel like it has made me braver. It has made me more relaxed. I feel like I can accomplish more, especially in my line of work where I'm always having to be cognitively engaged. Um, it has just been a beautiful awakening, if you will. And I weep for my little self and the younger versions of myself and the version of myself 3 weeks ago. Like I weep for them because being wrapped up in a state of mind that's not even your fault is just something it's just horrible to
Mm.
live with, and especially when you don't understand the underpinnings. So that again is why I believe therapy is a gift, because just learning the language of what happened to you, and then learning some strategies and being with a person that's totally objective and they have your best interest. Their end goal is to see you get better and be
Right.
better or be
Right.
different, however you want to put it.
So for those who have not sought therapy yet, but are curious or would like to know, what was your journey? Like, what did you do? I have heard some horror stories. So just let us know what you did, and if it was the first one that you got, or if you had to try out a few of them. And
Um, Due to my personality, I really don't jump into pools without a life vest. So the both of the therapists that I've had in my life that were extremely instrumental were discovered via word of mouth from other
mhm,
women who had gone through the similar situation. Like if it was trauma, or if they like the first therapist I had, someone that had gone through a divorce, I was going through a divorce, recommended her to me. And just so happened she was a woman of color and she was a Christian. It
mhm,
spot on. I mean, perfect. And then this therapist that I discovered when I moved to Texas, I found her through a student who just because I said I need a therapist, and she said I have just the person. I think you will love her. She's a Black woman. She's this, she's that. And as soon as I met her, and we meet virtually, but as soon as I met her, it was like I hit pay dirt. She's
perfect match.
absolutely perfect match.
Mhm.
I have had some instances where in the past where I've tried to find on my own, just go, how you can go on the websites and, see what your insurance covers. And it was a disaster. And the good thing is when I felt that, I didn't return. I only had one session with them and I just didn't go back because I'm like, you're going to probably do more harm than good.
Right.
So I did have that sense of, mismatch, disconnect, being unequally yoked, because I feel you have to have a almost spiritual connection with your therapist if you want to get the most out of it. Someone that understands with you, that cries with you. My therapist, I mean, I told her about a week I had last summer, and she just cried. She was like, I can't even believe that you're sitting here talking to me right now. Um, I call it my summer of Job. But I think that therapy is just amazing. And you have
That's
to
awesome.
find the right person. Yeah.
That's awesome. I have one last question for you, and then I would like for you to, if there's anything that you would want someone to know, or any advice that you want to give someone who had a complicated relationship with their mother and then they passed. But my last question for you is, how has her passing affected your healing? Has it been a better healing journey, or give me some details on that?
Yeah, I think her passing was the catalyst to me
Mhm.
starting the healing journey, because I felt like, in the Black community, you just don't speak of your business with your mom. I mean, my closest friends
Mhm.
know, but to do this in a public forum or to make this known, it was just impossible to do while my mom was alive. She would have been mortified, and I think that
Mhm.
I don't know if I could have been as open or transparent about our relationship if she was alive, or started my journey to healing, which was really I was in dire need of.
Mhm.
So yes, her passing really, really put me in a place where I was like, okay, now that chapter is closed. I have to get to the business of healing, because this is destroying me. Though I had this innate strength anyway to just persevere and make something of myself, but little Dion was dying. She was in crisis most of my adult life. So I had to attend to her most of all. And I think that there is literature out there about the dysfunctional mother daughter relationship and the impact that it can have on people, on women. And I just implore any woman that has had a difficult and you know my relationship with my mother, there is no other relationship that I've heard about that is like that. So I know that it was difficult. It wasn't something that people go through. And I have a great group of friends that have truly supported me. And I just implore any woman who has or had a difficult relationship with their mom, if the mom is still living or has passed on, to just please start on a journey to healing and know that you deserve to be loved, you deserve to be seen and heard and embraced. And I think most of the time we're powerful beyond measure but have been diminished so much in those relationships that we don't even know it. It's about finding a way to validate yourself. I know for me, I was torn down so much that it was almost impossible, but now it's incredible. It is absolutely
Mhm.
incredible. And I know that it takes courage and especially to be vulnerable. But I suggest just finding, even if it's one person that you can say, hey, let me tell you about my childhood. Let me tell you what I went through. Let me tell you about what happened inside the four walls of my home. You have to tell it. I saw a quote one time that said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, if a woman told the world her story, it would crack open. And that's how I feel. Like we have to tell our story to someone
Right.
in order to feel, I don't even want to say a sense of normalcy. I want to say a sense of relief and a sense of self-love and value and just worth, and to put ourselves, to take ownership of your own happiness. Because I think when your mom feels like your enemy or your op, as the young people say, or like
Mhm.
you don't understand, it really takes a toll on the soul.
Mhm.
So
Well, Dion, I appreciate you being so brave to even share your story, because I know it can't be easy to share those, intimate details of the complicated relationship that you had with your mom and some of the trauma that you went through. So I definitely appreciate you coming to the platform and sharing. This is what my vision of the platform has been, for us motherless daughters to come together and share our experiences so that we can help somebody else along the way, regardless of what your experience has been. So I thank you. Thank you.
yes, and I would love to come on again, and whatever you need, I would love to. Or if anyone needs anything, that's who I am as a person. So
I
thank
appreciate
you
that.
for
I
having
appreciate
me.
it. Absolutely. Thank you.